Welcome to the Real Estate Power Play Podcast, your launch pad for skyrocketing success in real estate investing. I'm your host, Gabe Rodarte, alongside Mark Monroe. We're ready to bring you transformative stories, groundbreaking strategies, and the insider secrets of real estate giants. Get ready to accelerate your investment journey and become a true power player in the world of real estate.
Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Power Play. I'm your host this week, Mark Monroe, and I'm excited that we have Todd here. And we guess we could have hit record before we started because we started talking business and a lot of good value that we could have dropped. But we're mainly talking about affordable housing. But Todd, thank you so much for coming. And why don't you kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, where you're from? I know you're in the Albany area, and then we'll just kind of get right into it. And I'll start asking you some fun questions.
Thanks, Mark. So my name's Todd Drowlette. I'm the managing director of Titan Commercial Realty Group in Albany, New York. I also have a show coming out on A&E called The Real Estate Commission that airs October 12th.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
So the TV show, it's an 8-episode series. It is the first ever show, I believe, on TV or streaming that follows commercial real estate. So it's a docu-series, so it's not fake. It's not drama. They're real deals. We've been filming for the last 6 or 7 months. The show comes out in October, but it basically follows me working roughly half the episodes. You're seeing it from the tenant or the buyer perspective and me helping them and going through the process. And half the episodes, you're seeing a deal from the seller or landlord perspective. And we just wrapped up Friday, and I can see why a lot of real estate shows, stage things, because filming real people and real businesses as it unfolds in real time. People think when you film reality shows or docuseries that there's cameras with you 24/7. That's not the case. It's, that would cost $100 million to do that. So you kind of have to spread out of where the deals are going to happen and, in the order, and have the production crews, around going through it. But it's, I've myself done over $2 billion. I've done 1,700 commercial real estate deals in my almost 25-year career. So I've done everything from, I was the youngest exclusive Starbucks broker in the country when I was 22. Any deals pretty much above Kingston, New York, out towards Syracuse, up to the Canadian border, I put most of Starbucks there. Today, I deal with a large Dunkin' franchisee. Over the years, I've represented IHOP, Hertz Rent-A-Car, a bunch of, household names.
Got it. So in those models, are these like Starbucks and these other, do they actually develop the buildings themselves, or is that a developer that comes in and caters it to the particular client and then does like a lease to them?
So it really depends on the client. So Starbucks specifically, they had a self-developed program where they would buy properties and build it. It's not their preference. I think they realized the use of their dollars and the approval process and how expensive it is to be a developer. They realized, we'd rather just say that's the corner we want to be on. Let a developer go, option the property, go through the approval process, get all the entitlements, say this is how much we'll pay for rent, give us this much in tenant improvement dollars, build the building for us, and here's what we'll pay you in rent for 10 years. A lot of the franchises like Dunkin' depends on the franchisee. Some of them say, I only want to own, and that's the location. To me, this is a real estate play. And some of them go, nope, I'm making this number up, but I can make a 40% return on every dollar I spend running these. I'd rather sign leases, have the developer make whatever his return is on the real estate, and I want to make my money from operating the business. Two totally different strategies. One's not right. One's no more right than the other. It just has to do with the particular client and how they view their returns on their own dollars.
Okay. Yeah. We actually have a piece of, go ahead.
One thing I would like to say, you asked me about the show. What I hope people take away from the show is, and investors in general, what I'm really, really hoping people take from the show is, so many people think you have to just invest in multifamily. And everybody thinks, I'm going to get into real estate. They think either have to flip houses or buy apartments. There are so many different types of real estate out there. When you're talking about Dunkin's or whatever, there's things called ground leases. It's where the person says, hey, I own my land. You're just going to ground lease it from me. You go get your own approvals, build your own building, and you're just going to pay me ground rent. And it's literally mailbox money. They pay you every month, as I'm sure you know. They pay you every month. There's office buildings. I think there's a huge opportunity for people to own office. or small strip centers. A lot of people think of commercial real estate, if they think of it at all, they think, oh, they're all $100 million deals in New York. It's like, no, you can own commercial real estate. You can buy a small 2 or 3 tenant strip center for $400,000 or $500,000, $600,000 in secondary and tertiary markets that can offer huge returns with very little risk.
Yeah, I like that. Like, speaking of ground lease, and now that I have a couple of properties, I own like 3 lots right next to each other, and the Dollar General, they're coming in, and it's a developer
Yeah.
that reached out to us, and they want to customize it. And we're talking, just like you're saying, we're talking about buying it outright or doing a ground lease. And I'm perfectly fine just holding it and doing a ground lease, and just like you said, get that mailbox money coming in. That's what I really like, is passive income.
I love ground leases. Some people go, but you don't get the depreciation because you don't own the building. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have any of the risk of owning the building. And at the end of the term, most leases say, well, they'll raise the building and knock it back to the things. But they always say to you, do you want to just keep the building? And I've never seen a scenario where I didn't want to keep the building. So worst case scenario, you have an improved property that now has a building on it that if they don't renew and they leave, now you're going to get probably double or triple what you're getting for your ground lease. So I love ground leases as opportunities.
Nice. And I, yeah, those are great. I highly recommend it. If nobody's learned or knows about it, you should really educate yourself a little bit more about ground leases. So, tell me, like, is you only do the Albany area, or do you do other parts of New York?
I work all over the country. So
Okay.
I have a client called Peter Harris Label Shopper. They do an off-price clothing brand that's similar to TJ Maxx. They've been around 40 years. So they're in 17 states. Everywhere they go, I find their locations for them and negotiate the deals. And then as a developer investor, I'm a deal chaser. So if there's a deal that makes sense, I'll do it anywhere in the continental United States.
Nice. So, do you typically find your buyers, and then you understand what their model is, and then you go out there and try to find a project for them and what they're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, typically with retailers specifically, so one of the interesting things, I have friends that are residential real estate agents, but the thing that's very different from residential, they're kind of like, hey, you do one deal and maybe it's 5 years, 6 years, you hope for a referral, or maybe the person's going to sell their house. Commercial real estate is such a relationship driven business. Like when I was doing Starbucks, you're representing Starbucks everywhere they're going in your territory. Or like you get in with a Dollar General, like the preferred developers, or even not, the broker, they're trying to get 1,000 stores open. They don't necessarily care. They want good locations that they can afford. So, and it's like anything, if I've spent hours and hours or weeks and weeks negotiating a lease with a potential landlord, it's so easy to go, hey, we did a good experience with this landlord. We did a deal with them. They know what we can pay for rent, and you can go out and option properties and then pitch them to them and say, hey, we did a deal on this corner and this corner, or in this town and this town. How about this town, this town, and this town? If the deal works and they like the location, it's just so much easier for everybody, because you go, great, let's change the date, let's change the rent, and let's change the legal entity, and boom, we got another lease. We don't have to waste more time doing it. And you already know all the protocols for all the construction, or what they want for approvals, what they'll agree to or not. So commercial real estate, particularly retail, if you get in with a retailer, it's very easy to do it over and over again. In an office, you see a ton of the guys that are medical office. They get a hospital group, or an urgent care center. And once you've gone through the process with them, now you know the process. So it's very easy to parlay one deal into the next deal, into 10 deals or into 20 deals, depending how big you are.
Yeah, I have a really good friend of mine who's a developer in Canada, and he's got that same model with A&W. A&W is really big up there. It's not very big down here, but he knows exactly, and he'll go out there, find a property, develop it, and then does the lease to them. And he does really well with it. And he takes it through the entitlement process. Now he does a little bit of other things. He does stuff with A&W, but now he's actually just finding parcels and taking it through the entitlement and then selling pieces off. He's doing this beautiful project. It was an old mill on one of the lakes up there, and he's just putting townhomes, a whole co-op type of situation and commercial in there, and it's just going to be a beautiful waterfront. So, and but he got it entitled, but he knows he's got all the connections. Like you said, relationship is key. Once you have the relationships, and you be able to bring different people in, and when you find a good deal like that. So
So
how
when
did you? Go
when you
ahead.
know what you're going to pay for rent, then you know what you can afford because you know what the approval process is going to take. So if you know what they'll pay you in rent, if you have to build it or ground lease, you know how much you can pay someone for their dirt or their building to then still get the approval. So it's just easier for everybody. And if you're somebody that gets in with a Family Dollar or Dollar General, Dollar Tree, they go into these small towns. You can buy properties. People don't know that there's even a market for their property. They just think, oh, I've had that land the family's owned for 30 years or 50 years, and they think it's worth 40 grand. You offer them 200, and they're like, oh my God, I just hit the lottery. And you know, you're going to make a huge return on it. So I love secondary, tertiary markets.
Yeah, I mean, even another good friend of mine, he owns a bunch of McDonald's in the same thing concept, but that model's a whole different model because the corporation owns it and they have to at least, which most of us in the real estate game understand the whole Ray Kroc model, how it happened, and that's where a lot of businesses, McDonald's technically is in the real estate business if you think about it, besides the fast food.
The famous quote of Ray Kroc. I think he was at a press conference. Somebody asked people, "What business am I in?" And they said the hamburger business. He said, "No, I'm in the real estate business."
It's
Him,
genius how he structured that whole model.
I think McDonald's and the Catholic Church, I think, own like more real estate than anybody in the world.
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree on that one. Yeah, the Catholic Church is, I mean, everywhere you go there. And it's interesting, their model, but they've been selling a little bit off. So let's talk about, because a lot of us that don't understand the process of getting things approved, like for example, New York, we always hear in New York, oh, we don't want to do business in New York because the process and everything takes so long. Yes, you're in a commercial versus residential because there's more consumer protection regulations on the consumer side versus commercial. But what's that process look like when you're trying to get something rezoned, or are you already looking for something that's already zoned for that particular situation and then going and trying to get things approved? Like, what's that look like?
Okay, so that's multiple questions, but so for a rezone, typically you want to avoid a rezone because rezones can be very challenging, and sometimes you could spend 2 years trying to get a rezone and they can just tell you no. So to be successful in a rezone, a lot of times you have to find that there was precedent somewhere in that municipality where they gave someone else a rezone. And then you can say, well, you have to give it to me because you gave it to them. Typically, when I'm looking at property for a particular use, I'm looking at the zoning and then I'm looking at the permitted uses within that zone. And then I narrow it down to that because that's a way faster process. A whole rezone is wildly expensive and it could take 2, 3 years and then you could be denied in the end. So the lowest hanging fruit is always find the zoning for your particular use. Like Dollar General, I'll use them as an example. So Dollar General, okay, most municipalities will say that's a mercantile general retail use. Some consider a grocery store because they have, the frozen sections. So you just have to look in each municipality where you want to put them and you check the zoning, check permitted uses, and then you look at the setbacks and what you need, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to pull up tax maps and drive around within that zone and say, okay, what's big enough? Typically, Dollar General, you need about an acre. Sometimes they can fit on half an acre, just depends on green space requirements and other setbacks. But basically, you look at all the setbacks, the green space, everything in that municipality, then you figure how big of a space you need. So then you go out and find it, and then I'll look and say, okay, now I'm going to pull up traffic counts and say, okay, which of these roads within the zoning has the highest traffic counts? What are other traffic generators? Dollar General in particular typically likes to be 2 to 3 miles from a Walmart. So knowing that, I'm going to look at it and say, okay, what's zoned for general retail use or supermarket? Where can I find an acre that they can fit on or a little less? What has the highest traffic counts and what other traffic generators are there? Is there a school or is there a high school? Is there a large office park? What would be other traffic generators that would make that desirable? So a lot of times when you're a retailer developer, you have to think about who's their customer and if they're coming into the market, what's the highest and best place that I can place this, and then try to find that. And then within it, then you're going to negotiate and try to tie up properties. If there's three they might want, I'm going to option all three and then pitch it to them and go, which do you want? And try to option it for no or as little money as I can for a year or 2 years. And a lot of times when you're going to buy a property, if you offer somebody a little bit more money, they don't pay as much attention to how long you're optioning their property for. They just see the big payout at the end if the deal happens. And then the second
So
part of your question, I think, was in New York State. I have friends developing down in Texas and North Carolina and Florida. They can go through a full site plan approval and get a building permit sometimes in 60 or 90 days. most municipalities in upstate New York, I'm not talking about, the boroughs or Manhattan or the Bronx, but or Long Island, but typically Westchester North out to Buffalo. If you have a ground up thing and it involves wetlands, you could be 2 years to get approvals. If you have an existing site and you're going through that you want to get site plan approval to get a building permit, you're typically, for most projects, 6 to 9 months to get approved. Sometimes it's a year. It depends on, are you hitting the dates properly? When, hey, you have to have this in by this date, because some municipalities only meet every month. So you need to get in and have the review period and the comment period. But no, New York says they're pro-business. There's so many, hoops to jump through in New York State. It's difficult, which is why a lot of retailers, when they can expand, they do it in other places. And then they're like, okay, New York's a big market, they have to do it. But a lot of times they'll push that back 2-3 years and expand around New York before they come into it.
Yep. Vermont's the same way. That's kind of, I was looking at a piece of, and up there they have the whole environmental, they have an Act 250 is just like, and I was looking at, go ahead.
Act 250, I'm working on a deal in Bennington, Vermont. We're existing. We just want to expand that same client I mentioned, Label Shopper. They just want to take over vacancy next door. It's still a 9-month to a 1-year approval process to get a building permit in an existing shopping center to literally just expand into vacancies next door to you. Anywhere else, you'd file for a building permit in 2, 3, 4 weeks tops, and you'd have a permit and could do it. You got to go through Act 250. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
And what was the application, like $13,000, something crazy, right? Is that what they charge for that?
If you're lucky, it could be north of 20 grand to go through, because typically you need attorneys to take you through. You need attorneys, engineers for what's essentially a building permit that somewhere else you could, like in Albany County in New York, I could fill out a building permit myself and the filing fee might be $200. It's municipalities and the governmental. I'm pro keeping people safe, but it has gone so far in the other direction of like just costing money on top of money on top of money of just bureaucratic BS that's just mind numbing.
And it doesn't make, that's why some of these towns are struggling so bad, and they need jobs. I mean, look it up in Burlington there. I'm sure you saw that Amazon's been trying to cut in and they're pushing it out, but they need jobs. And these are the areas that have homeless, and you can create jobs and get people off the streets and help people out. But it's just, I was looking at a project, 180 acres, and about 45% of it was wetlands. And the application alone was going to be about $200,000. Just, and you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars not even knowing if you can be able to get this done. So it's like, and it's just cost prohibitive. It just does not make any sense.
I think the problem is like people like in power now that grew up in the 80s, give or take, 70s, 80s. I think they watched like every movie from the 80s where every real estate developer, drives in with a big white limousine, and they live in a 40,000 square foot house. Like, I think their perception is every developer, it's like developers are everyday people like else. Some are very wealthy, but the average guy is making a living and, is probably a multimillionaire, but they don't have $100 million. But municipalities and the governments are acting like, oh, it's just money's unlimited and you can just spend anything. It's crazy.
It is. So over your career, like what is like your biggest type of project that you've done that you worked on that would tell us, what do you think on something like that? And what was the challenges that you learned from?
So the biggest project is a project I'm doing right now. So I'm doing a 250 lot subdivision up in the upstate New York. And the biggest challenge was I've owned this property 5-6 years, and I started the process during COVID. And then in the process, I got caught in political infighting. So I was located in one municipality. That municipality got its water and sewer from an adjoining municipality. And then New York State DEC said, oh, well, we need to know that you have enough capacity. Well, the municipality that doesn't care about my project getting approved because I'm not in their municipality, they don't get any tax revenue, they get nothing from it. They're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So I literally was like through a process to get approved, and then I got stopped for a year and a half while the municipality I was located in essentially had to sue the other municipality and force them to basically do a study to prove it. And then I had things within the municipality where even the departments, like Like the head of the sewer department didn't get along with the head of the highway department. So the head of the highway department paved over all the manhole covers. So I have engineers that are looking on plans trying to like look and figure out, okay, what the depth for the pitch to figure out what I need for the sewer lines. And they're like, we don't see a manhole cover here anywhere because the head of the highway department paved over it, like because he doesn't like it. Was, so that this has been the most interesting 5 years. And it's a 30-40 million dollar project, but yeah, it's been in pure insanity.
I've been in the business a long time, and just when you think you heard it all, every time you turn around, there's another story. I mean, that's quite the story, to be frank. I mean, it's just, you know,
I had
covering manholes.
when the project started.
I'm sorry.
I had hair when the project started. I ripped it all out. It was it's crazy.
And but lucky you actually purchased. Did you have to purchase the property, or was it you had it all tied up during that whole time?
Well, I had it optioned for 2 years, and then my option was up, and I was like, oh, this is a great piece of property. I'm just going to close on it. So I closed on it, but and to add insult to injury, for like the initial portion of like the first phase, my site work to put in just my roads, water, and sewer was originally 1.3 million. The last bid I just got is 3.6 million for exactly the same work, just because it took so long in the approval process. And then since COVID, the price of everything going up. So you just, your profit's the same. I'm not going to charge more, or my profit's less. It's like I'm not going to charge more
Right.
because I can't. The market's what the market is, but my construction costs are just triple, what they would have been if the project would have been approved expeditiously.
That's I'm sorry to hear that, but that's the nightmare stuff that we have to go through to try to, you work on something and it takes years to get certain things done. That's why it's like a lot of times investors will do business in other states because of stupid stuff like this. I mean, Texas, I mean, you can get something done in like weeks down there. It's crazy with how fast they get development projects. But the demand is in markets where you're located, and look at the areas where the housing shortage right now is, and they still have a lot of red tape going on where they need to kind of open up the red tape and help with the housing situation.
Well, what's funny is they've created their own problems. Like New York has a affordable housing shortage problem because it's so difficult to get projects approved. And if things are big enough, then they want you to jump through 80 different obstacles. So they've created their own problem. They make it so difficult that nobody wants to do it. And then the people who do want to do it, you literally tax them to death, and then you just make them spend years to get approvals on things. That's if they'd wake up, what they would do instead of trying to offer incentives like tax incentives, which are fine, but what they should really do is take a hard look and say, okay, maybe it's projects that are 20 or 30 acres or smaller. We're going to have an expedited process and make it a statewide approval that doesn't need to go through local municipalities. How about that? That's a crazy idea. But you have a million states that either have state approval process or county approval process, instead of having to go through, the stuff with boards. In a lot of these smaller municipalities, you have unsophisticated people that are on these boards, or you have people that choose to get on these boards that are anti-development. So they intentionally want to fight everything because the whole not in my backyard, but by their backyard, they mean their whole municipality.
Yeah, it's I live in Boca Raton right now, and the gentleman that did he's part of a related group. He did Hudson Yards and stuff, and he was willing to do a 30-acre project in Boca, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was going to be beautiful. They're going to develop the city hall, make it everything, and they got put, and the developer was going to buy property and then do a swap with the city with public land, and but he's getting all this public land for free, and the narrative got twisted, and now it's probably not going to go through but we need it. We need restaurants, and it's going to create so much tax dollars. And now we have Boca Raton has always been supposed to be the nice area of South Florida, but now you have these smaller municipalities starting to surpass because they're doing pro development and they're bringing businesses and making things a lot, and you need jobs. I mean, you have growth. I mean, look at our country, how many people we have in our country in the areas and we need housing. Like you said, it's just creating red tape. You said something there, and I just want the listeners to understand. What is it? You said option. And once you kind of just give a quick education to people that don't know what that is.
So what an option is, when you present it to a property owner, you never phrase it or call it an option, because anybody with common sense goes, oh, that's an option, so you don't have to do it. All it is a purchase contract with contingencies. And those contingencies are essentially, so I always say this to people. When I'm buying a property, I'll go, listen, we'll agree on a price, but this is developing. I go through the whole spiel. I go, it is not like you see on TV. This could take me 2 years to get approved. I'm going to risk hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering and environmental studies and wetland studies and whatever else I need. So what I'll say to people is, I'm going to give you $1,000 as a refundable deposit, regardless of what I'm paying for the property. But what I offer people is I say, listen, I have a sunk cost. If at the end of this period I can't close for some reason, I will give you everything I spent money on. I'll give you the drawings. I'll give you the environmental studies. I'll give you, so you get that I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on, so you can have that if for some reason I can't move forward. I don't put much money up on projects because for those reasons. And a lot of people go, oh, that's pretty good. And the reality is I'll probably never do anything with it. And 90% of the time I do close on the properties that I option. But essentially all an option is a purchase contract that has a ton of contingencies. I don't want to take on a property unless I can use it. So to me, I say you got to give me the time. And whatever I think it'll take in a municipality, I ask for twice that amount of time, because God forbid a COVID type event happens again, or municipality needs to sue another municipality. There are so many unforeseen things. Like you said, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I have a friend of mine who has a lease. He goes, when I started this, my leases were 3 pages long. It was a Bloomberg lease. He goes, today my leases are 75 pages long, because there's some total of your bad experiences. My purchase contracts now, when I'm the developer, are a sum total of my bad experiences. So every time I get screwed in a municipality, when something happens, I add those things to my purchase contract. But I try to keep purchase contracts short, but I like to have a lot of contingency times where I say, hey, I need every 6 months to be able to extend this again. And I never option something for less than 2 years, just because if you're doing ground up, it takes forever.
Nice. I like it. And you hit the nail on the head. It's just all about that. And this is really informative, because I know a lot of times we get commercial people on, but they're not really developers. So it's good that you're kind of giving a site for the development side of things. So it's really it's very good for people to see this. Now, tell us a little bit about, I know you touched a little bit about the show in a second ago. Kind of go a little bit more deeper into that. And then what date and time, when's it going to be on? Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
So if anyone's interested in actually learning about how commercial real estate deals are put together, because our show is a docuseries, you will literally see from my initial meeting with a potential client all the way through the process, the negotiating of it, the site selection, what they're kind of going through, and you're constantly seeing the interviews of that particular client. So like one episode, I have divorce attorneys that have been in the same office for 10 years, finally wants to own. So we're taking them through that process. But you're seeing real life business owners who are trying to balance between running, in this instance, running his law practice, searching for spaces, and then you see me taking him through the process with his bank, and just all the stuff that you need a commercial real estate expert to help you with, from, oh, you need an architect to help the design. How do we arrange that? You need contractors to give you bids and prices. The HVAC and mechanicals, we need to check those. And are those in good shape? What's the condition of the parking lot? What's the condition of the roof? So anybody who's interested in investing in commercial real estate, or they're a business owner that needs a new warehouse, they need to move their office space, they need to get out of their house and rent office space. It'll give you a lot of tidbits that people will be able to pick up and go, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, I never thought of that. You'll also see negotiating strategies that I use that are kind of creative, thinking outside of the box. When I always say every good deal dies 3 times before it happens. So I've been doing this for so long. A lot of the things I can cut off the past, but then there's always something that pops up. So you're going to see real deals with real people and real business owners. None of my large corporate clients are featured in this season. This is all focused on small business owners, so that the average person who's either thought about starting their own business, who's in corporate America and hates it, saying, what would that really be like? And what would that process be like to open my first retail store or to rent office space? This will give you a very, very good kind of look behind the curtains and give you the high level things you need to know. The show airs October 12th at 9 a.m. On A&E. It's streaming the next day. And it's an 8-episode series, and we're really excited about it.
It's awesome. Congratulations on it. And
Thank
how
you.
can people want to, if they are listening to us and besides watching it, how can people contact you?
So my firm is Titan Commercial Realty Group. You can Google us. My Instagram is at Better Talk to Todd. And the show is at the Real Estate Commission on all social media.
Right. Well, Todd, this was really informative. I'd love to have you back on sometime after the show, see how it goes, and talk a little bit about it. And I really appreciate it. And is there a question I didn't ask you that I should have asked that you think that would be good for the viewers?
That's an amazing question. I always ask that same question to people when I'm wrapping something up. A lot of times people ask me about basic negotiating strategies. So if there was one tidbit I was going to leave somebody with, the one piece of advice, just because I watch so many people do it, it's just a terrible mistake to make, and I don't know why people do it, but they do it. So many people, when they think about what they want to offer on somebody, so I'm just making this up. Say a building was $500,000. So often they'll say to me, "What's the asking price?" I'll go 500,000, and then they'll respond back to me and they'll go, I don't think I could pay more than like 425, 450 on that. I haven't even responded yet, and you're already negotiating against yourself, because now all I heard was 450. And it's like the number one mistake people make. Be very careful of the words you use and what you say when you're negotiating. Be thinking in your head and going, let me start at 425. So many people are just afraid of confrontation, or they go, oh, maybe they're going to think that's too low. I always say to people when I start any negotiation, I go, I'm the cheapest person you'll ever meet, but when I write you a check, it'll never bounce. And I like to steal things because of the unknown. Like one of my mentors in business always said, in real estate, he said, so many people speculate in real estate. You don't want to speculate, you want to invest. And speculating in real estate is, I'm going to buy this for $1 and hope it's worth $2 down the road. He said, you make a fortune in real estate anytime you can buy $1 for 50 cents. So what I know what that market is, and I look at something when you're talking about Dollar General, if you know what they'll pay and you can see a piece of property and somebody says, oh, I want 100 grand for this, and I instantly know, hell, that's worth 250,000. I'm buying that instantly because I know I double my money. You make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. I guess that's what I'll leave people with. You make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell.
That's amazing. That's good stuff. I mean, that was a lot of information there that you just gave us. That was really golden. So, what we call as a power play. So, thank you so much for Todd coming on, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Another episode of Real Estate Power Play. If you like what you hear, please like, share it to others. And if there's a segment that you want us to do a recording on, just put it in the comments, and we'll love to reach out to you. Take the guys soon. Bye bye.